wild, but whenever you do, you always have to get behind the head, so because once you've got control of the head, you have control of the snake. Of course, here is the range of the rock pythons in Africa. As you can see, they're found in much of Africa, except in the Sahara Desert around here. Now for the second largest land mammal, but also probably the most heavily persecuted in all of Africa. The white and black rhinos. The white rhino and the black rhino are found in Africa, but they are very different to each other. But of course, interesting fact that my mum told me about the rhinos of Africa is the names were actually a mistranslation by Europeans, but how you tell them apart is you look at the mouth. On a white rhino here, it has a flat mouth because it's a grazer, which means it feeds on grass. But a black rhino here, it has a beak-shaped mouth because it's a browser, so it feeds on low shrubs and trees. In fact, it can actually snap off branches as thick around as my arm. But the white rhino is also the largest of the African rhinos and the most sociable of all the rhino, and is usually found in big groups. And rhinos are found throughout Africa and Asia, but they come in all different shapes and sizes, but they all share horns, and in Africa they have 2 horns. And they don't have very good eyesight, but they have a very keen sense of smell and hearing, and if they're surprised or feel threatened, that they will charge at anything from lions to hyenas to other herbivores and even humans. Territorial males and mothers with calves can be a handful, but unfortunately every species of rhino in both Africa and Asia is in serious trouble, and it's all for their horns. Now, rhino horn is made of a substance called keratin. It's the same substance that our fingernails and our hair are made of. It's not bone or ivory, but many people, but the Chinese believe it has medicinal purposes, when that's absolutely stupid, and there's no scientific proof that it works. But regardless, they're the most pig-headed of people in the world. But also, as well as China, there are countries of Vietnam, Taiwan, North Korea, and even in the Middle East want rhino horn, because it's also not only used for medicines, it's also used to make Arabian dagger hilts, but also to use as trinkets, and even ground up and served in drinks. Despite the fact that it's illegal and there's no scientific proof that rhino horn has any medicinal purposes, it can actually fetch about $60,000 per kilo. And because of that, these animals are being absolutely slaughtered by poachers who chase them down with AK-47, with helicopters, shoot them with AK-47 machine guns, and hack off their horns with chainsaws. And it's not just the adult rhinos that are affected, it's also their calves, because quite often when their mothers are killed, because the rhino calves, their horns haven't developed yet, and they're just left out in the savannah to die, and a juvenile rhino that's on its own would be an easy meal for lions, hyenas, wild dogs, jackals, any other large predator. But of course, we've already driven one species of rhino in Africa to extinction, which is the northern white rhino, because the only 2 left are female, and they can't reproduce with each other, so they've been classed as extinct because the only 2 left are female, and when they die, then that's a species that has been around for millennia gone. I mean, there are people working to protect rhinos in Africa, like with armed patrols monitoring their movements, but also anti-poaching squads and people who actually save orphaned rhinos when their mothers are killed. I mean, that can be a very dangerous job, as poachers are heavily armed, they're well organised, and they're extremely dangerous. In fact, around the 1960s, southern white rhinos dropped to as few as 30 animals left. But what followed was one of the greatest conservation success stories of all time. And they saved the southern white rhino from extinction. And now there are still a few thousands of them in southern Africa. But unlike the black rhino, which is still on the brink of extinction, the white rhino in southern Africa is no longer endangered, but they are still vulnerable. And it's all for these, their horns, which, pound for pound, have become worth far more than gold. Of course, here is their range in Africa. Well, the range of the white rhino and the black rhino. Now, I'm going to show you all the largest predatory fish and also the most feared animal on the planet. It is the great white shark. The great white shark is the largest predatory fish on the planet today. When I say the largest, I mean a fully grown female can grow to be 6 meters long, weigh as much as a ton, has 300 teeth that are as sharp as a kitchen knife, and they could. These sharks are found off the south coast, off the coast of South Africa, and they come there every year to hunt seals, which are their favourite food. Of course, each dawn, Cape fur seals leave their colonies to go fishing. But to get to the open sea, they have to cross a narrow strip of water that is patrolled by great whites. The great white shark will actually race up from the depths to hit the seal and perform what is known as a breach, where they grab a hold of a seal and almost launch their entire bodies out of the water. And of course, their patterning is with like greyish blue on the top and a white underside. That's called counter shading. It's how many marine animals are camouflaged. Like if you look on the shark from below, they blend in with the dark depths of the sea. But if you look at them from above, they blend in with the sky, with the sun coming down onto the sea. Of course, great white sharks are awesome predators. In fact, they have, while humans, we have like our senses of sight, smell, taste, touch, and of course hearing. Sharks have an extra 2 senses to us. I mean, they have incredible eyesight and hearing. And of course, they also have a very, very keen sense of smell. In fact, it's said that a shark can smell a teaspoon of blood in an Olympic swimming pool-sized area of water. They also have an organ that runs down the length of their bodies called the lateral line, which is laden with hair cells that can pick up the tiny vibrations in the water. But probably their most incredible sense lies in their snout. It's called electroreception, where they can actually detect the electricity of the world's magnetic grid, and even detect the electrical signals given off by their prey, which is absolutely amazing. Of course, once the shark gets to within no more than a few meters of a seal while it's racing at it, what it'll do is it'll roll its eyes back into its head to protect them. But they aren't steering blind, because they can use their electroreception to find the electrical signals of the seal, and then, bang, they leap out of the water with the seal being struck by 300 of these teeth. And of course, thanks to the main thing that the shark is after is blubber. It's a thick layer of fat underneath the surface of the seal's skin that keeps them insulated against the cold, but it's packed with calories and oil that they need to feed on. The great white's turn of speed is powered by high metabolism, and they only thrive in cold, temperate seas because only those seas have food sufficient enough to feed such a ravenous predator. But sharks have been around on the planet for over 400 million years, so long before the dinosaurs, and even to this day, they are some of the most feared animals on the planet. I mean, one of the main reasons for that is when the movie Jaws came out 51 years ago, it cemented the image of the mindless, man-eating, monstrous killing machine in the public image. But also, if someone's attacked by a shark, it immediately makes headlines of the newspaper or the news. And of course, the great whites actually pose very little threat to people. In fact, almost all attacks are cases of mistaken identity when they're trying to figure out if surfers are seals or if they mistake surfers for seals, or quite often if humans are just being incredibly stupid. But only about 8 to 10 to as many as 12 people are killed each year by sharks. And in that time, as many as 10,000 sharks are slaughtered each year by humans. I mean, the main reasons are we are destroying their habitats, we are overfishing, taking vast amounts of their prey out of the water, out of the seas, and quite often sharks get caught in nets, but also sharks are also pulled out of the sea so their fins can be hacked off and the rest of their bodies dumped back in the sea, and their fins are used for shark fin soup, which is an Asian delicacy which is particularly common at weddings in places like India, China, Vietnam, Taiwan and North Korea. The fins add no taste at all, they're all purely for texture, and unfortunately there are many people who see it as a status symbol and want to eat it. Because great white sharks don't just eat seals, they can also hunt fish as big as tuna, to dolphins, dugongs, turtles and even whales. Yeah, if we don't stop with the fixation that sharks are mindless, man-eating monsters, then these animals could go extinct in the next 50 years. And these animals are top predators, and if we take them out of the seas, everything will fall out of balance. But of course, here is the range of the great white sharks in South Africa. Now, the next group of animals I'm going to show you are some of the most important, but also misunderstood. But also some of my favourite animals, vultures. Vultures are birds of prey, but they don't usually tend to do their own hunting. They're primarily scavengers, but then again, scavengers are just predators going about getting their meals the easy way. And there are many different kinds of vultures in Africa. There's griffin vulture, the hooded vulture, the Egyptian vulture, and I cannot remember which one this is called, but vultures are some of the most important of all creatures, and one of the main reasons for that is they are known as the undertakers of the bush, which is like when an animal dies, vultures fly in and they consume the carcass, and that prevents the spread of diseases like Ebola, botulism, malaria.